back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys! So I'm here today to talk about two books which both contained short fiction. So by that I have one Tor.com novella, which is this one, and I have a short story collection, which is this one. So I'm going to start off with the collection of short stories. This is by Jo Walton, it's called Starlings, and I was sent this by the publisher for review. It was one of my anticipated releases, so I was definitely excited about it, but I didn't love it as much as I wanted to. Now, unbeknownst to me, this is actually not just a short story collection, it's actually got poetry in it as well, and poetry is something I struggle with a bit because I tend to find that I don't always get it, or I don't always enjoy it in the way that some people get really invested or emotional responses. I find it quite hard to get into something so incredibly short as a poem. I know some poems are super long, but most of these were fairly short, and by that I mean like a page or so. There was only one poem in this collection that I enjoyed, and that was a retelling of Goldilocks. All of the others really hark back to ancient mythology, and if you don't know your ancient mythology really quite well, you're probably not going to get them or enjoy them as much as you should. So for me, I know some ancient mythology, but not an awful lot, and for me this just didn't really work. Now, of the short stories, I think there are about over 20 short stories in here, and it's a fairly short book, so they're actually quite short stories, like a couple pages each. One of the stories is actually a play, and it's called Three Shouts on a Hill. So that one was a really interesting one to look at, because I didn't really anticipate a play being included, and I think plays can be really interesting to read and analyse. And this one was a play all about these three siblings who do a terrible deed and then get sent to basically do loads of quests all over the world and rectify their wrong. Now, I liked the play, I thought that was fun. The short stories were a really mixed bag. Some of them just didn't make an awful lot of sense, or some of them were too involved or in-depth. And at the very beginning of this book, Jo Walton actually does a sort of introduction where she talks about short fiction and what short fiction is deemed to be, and how very different it can be depending on what circumstances you're writing in. Is it experimental? Is it something that you're trying to sell because you want to make money? Is it something you're trying to sell for an anthology to fit to a theme? Things like this. And she makes some really good points in her introduction about how very different each short fiction piece can be and the purpose of it. And I think that was great. I loved the introduction, but I just felt that I found it really hard to get into many of her stories. In fact, of the 20, I think there were maybe 4 that I actually really did like, and none of them that I totally fell in love with. I think they were all just a bit tricky for me to get my head into, or to really feel like it was a complete story. Many of them felt like they were starting a story and then just didn't go anywhere or filtered out, and I just felt like there was a lot lacking from them. So I'm just quickly going to list off the stories that I did enjoy for you guys if you are interested in possibly reading any of them. I think some of them can be found online. I liked the first story, which was called Three Twilight Tales. They were kind of almost like fairy tales that tied in together, and I enjoyed that one. The second one that I liked was called The Panda Coin, and this followed the journey of an unusual coin that went through a process of different people and individuals, and I really liked that one a lot. I thought that was quite sci-fi, futuristic. And then the other one that I really liked alongside the play was At the Bottom of the Garden, and this one was a very brutal, very short story about the meanness of children and how evil they can be, and I really liked that one, so I enjoyed that one too. But of the others, many of them were just too complex or too unfinished or too weird for me. Maybe I'm just not in the right headspace for it, I don't know, but it did feel like it was quite disjointed and there wasn't a real theme overarching it. It was kind of a mishmash of sci-fi, fantasy, speculative, and mythology, retellings, poetry, all in one. And I do feel like for this book, Jo Walton did an awful lot in one book, and some of it's going to stick with people and some of it isn't, and it completely depends on what sort of short fiction you like, whether or not this will be for you. I know for some people it will be excellent, and for others it just won't make the sense. So I ended up giving this a 2 stars overall, a bit hit or miss with Jo Walton, so I don't know. I'm going to keep reading some of her novels though. I've got a few I want to try and I think I might like them more, so we'll see. I gave this 2 stars. Let me know your thoughts. The other one that I quickly want to talk about too is the second one in the Industrial Magic series by Emma Newman. I really liked the first one in this, but I felt like it was very much a setup. So this is Weaver's Lament, the second one. And this is again following the 2 main characters from the first, who are Charlotte and Ben Gunn. They are brother and sister. And in the previous book, we saw Ben go off to the magic school to start learning his trade, whereas Charlotte, although she is also magical, keeps her ability hidden and does not want to go there. She's heard lots of bad things about this industry and she just doesn't want to get involved. However, her brother writes her a letter right at the start of this and he asks her to come to where he is and help, and she does so in secret because he shouldn't be communicating with her, and he tells her that there are rumours of someone kind of vandalising the mill that he is working in, and he needs her help to go and find out what's really going on. So she dresses up as a mill worker and she goes into the mill and she kind of tries to find out the mystery, what's going on there. Now, for me, this definitely felt like a fun read, and I really enjoy the kind of steampunk elements that Emma Newman is drawing on and the industrial elements that she's drawing on with these books. They feel so short to me because I really like Emma Newman. She's one of my favourite authors, and so I always get to the end of the book and I'm like, oh wow, where's the rest of the story? It's so short. I'm sure there will be more to come because there's so much that she sets up in these books each time that could be really fascinating, and there's definitely an overarching story. I feel like it was a really mixed bag again. Like, I loved bits of this. There were some bits that I took issue with because it was too short. I couldn't get invested as much as I wanted to, and also I just felt like there were some times where Charlotte, our main character, is a very, very privileged position. She's always been raised in a fancy house, and even though they're on the poorer end, she definitely wasn't in a really bad situation, which many of these mill workers were, and this was kind of her going into the mill and being exposed for the first time to the harsh realities of the world. And I really enjoyed seeing that, but she also irritated me for being so dim-witted at times. She comes out alright in the end, and she's definitely a good character in the end, and she acts in the way that I would want her to act. So I liked it a lot, I enjoyed it. I feel like it's too short, I want more. I gave it a 3.5 and I'll definitely continue on with the series. So that is that. Those are the 2 books I have to review today. Do let me know in the comments what you thought of them, if you've read either, or if you're going to be picking up the short story collection when it comes out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.